Hello everyone. So in the previous sessions we have discussed about the sources of water supply, surface sources and subsurface sources. So today we shall discuss about the sampling and its procedures. So before sampling, so we should understand what kind of water we we require for our drinking purposes. Okay. See, water constitutes about one of the important components in the life of humans. Okay, and the polluted water will have direct impact on human health because there are a lot of issues with respect to poor water quality, and it will lead to various forms of waterborne diseases and water-induced diseases. So, in order to have the safe water, uh, the water should be free from all forms of physical and mineral, logical, chemical, and biological impurities. So, how should be our drinking water? So, these are some of the points which says that what kind of water we should drink. So, first thing is it should be aesthetically acceptable. That means it should be clear, crystal clear, it should be transparent, and it should have a sparkling appearance. So, before we drink the water, and it should be free from all form of dissolved impurities, it should be free from turbidity and bad odor, or it should not have any color, and it should be crystal clear, and it should also have the reasonable temperature. So people cannot drink too hot or too cold water. And if water is having all these characteristics, then it is called as the potable water. Okay, so potable water is a term which is associated with the water which is free from all forms of impurities. Then how we should select the source of the water? The selection of water supply source involves a various review of alternatives available with respect to water quality as well as its quantity. So these some of the points which should be taken into consideration before selecting the source of water supply. So the source whatever we are selecting, it should be free from all forms of impurities, and the water quality should be good, and it should give us the safe yield. That means if you are supplying water for 2000 people, then whatever source you are selecting, either subsurface groundwater source or surface water source, so you should supply water to all those 2000 people for a period of 30 to 40 years. So that means we can safely extract this water, treat it, and supply to the community. Then collection requirements, whatever the intake structures and other wells we are constructing, so it should be feasible to construct for the selected source. And the treatment requirements, the water treatment involves the uh, various units like sedimentation, coagulation, flocculation. So the treatment requirements should be selected, and it depends on the quality of the water. Then transmission and distribution requirements, that is the laying of underground pipes, different types of walls, and all those things should be required for a water supply scheme. And coming to before supplying the water, the very important aspects is the checking the water for its quality. Okay, and the collection of the water from any source is called as the sampling. Okay, and continuously checking its purity, that is called as monitoring and surveillance. So in India we have various departments which takes care of this monitoring and surveillance job, because we have to supply the safe water to the communities to prevent the risk of diseases, spread of diseases to the communities. Okay, so we have different departments which is listed here. So first one is Department of Health and Family Welfare, so Department of Social Welfare. So in Karnataka we have a department called as KUWSDB, which means Karnataka Urban Water Supply and Drainage Board, so which takes care of this water quality monitoring and surveillance job. Because water quality schemes are each involves the construction, operation, maintenance, checking water quality, and which is on regular basis. So various organization will join hands together and they work for supplying the safe and potable water to the communities. So for bigger cities like Bangalore and Mumbai, so they have separate water quality boards. For example, in Karnataka we have Jal Nigam board at Bangalore, so which takes care of the water quality monitoring and surveillance job. So apart from that, at rural level, at the village level and panchayat level, we have a department called as rural development department, so which takes care of this monitoring and surveillance job. And some of the medical and technical institutes will also check the water quality, and some of the NGOs also involved in the job of this water quality testing and all. So for testing water, we have should have the adequate laboratory facilities. Okay, so the laboratory infrastructure, it depends on the water quality parameters what we are checking. Water quality parameters are physical, chemical and biological parameters. So based on the analysis requirements, so we should have enough instrumentation. That is, in India, the lab should be accredited by NABL or Ministry of Environment and Forest from New Delhi, so that the competent authority will come and analyze the laboratory facilities, the laboratory analysis procedures, and based on that they will accredit laboratory and they can take up this surveillance job. So accordingly, the laboratories are divided into 3 different levels, which is as shown here. Okay, so at village level, so the laboratory is called as level 1 laboratory. At district level we have level 2 laboratories. At state level, so we have level 3 laboratories. So at village level we have the basic laboratory facilities with some field test kits, which will give you the direct readings based on the color coding analysis of the particular solvents, and some important bacteriological identifications with minimum facilities. So coming to village level, district level laboratories, that is called as level 2 laboratories, so wherein we can do the analysis chemically and bacteriological examinations with some level 2 laboratories consists of some advanced instrumentation to analyze the chemical and bacterial examinations in the water, and level 3 consists of special analysis like heavy metals toxicological studies, pesticides analysis with some modern instruments like high performance liquid chromatography, gas chromatography and atomic absorption spectrophotometers, UV spectrophotometers, etc. So which are required to analyze the various forms of impurities at micro level in water testing. And they can also advise the district level and village level laboratories. They can do the knowledge transfer. They will advise on the matters of the water quality analysis, and they are also involved in the policy formation. So what are the objectives of water quality sample? So why we have to collect and analyze the water? Okay, so the first objective is to obtain reliable and useful data to assess the impact of human activities on water quality and its suitability. So because water what we are supplying and what the water we are drinking, it should be of a definite quality. So the water quality parameters will be prescribed by BIS standards, as I have told you in previous slides and previous sessions, that in India the water quality parameters, the water quality parameters are given by the Bureau of Indian Standards 10500/2012. So wherein it will give you the permissible limit and maximum allowable limit and desirable limits for various water quality parameters like physical, chemical and biological water quality parameters. And we should assess the water quality before supplying it to the consumers. And we can also keep the sources under observation, and we can know the extent of contamination of the sources, that is river or lake and underground. So if we have to continuously monitor these sources, so that we can safely supply the water to the communities. So what are the factors which influence the sources of water quality? So there are natural factors like climate, watershed characteristics, geology, microbial growth and forest fires and all. So these are the natural factors. Okay, so climate depends, like if there is a monsoon season, or if there is a tropical cold region, or if it is an extreme hot region, so the water quality parameters will differ based on the climatological factors. Then it also depends on watershed characteristics. That means if you have a watershed area which consists of large irrigated lands, or if it is having a forest area, whenever the rainfall happens, so it picks up all the minerals if it is the forest area. And if it is an irrigated land, so people use artificial chemicals and pesticides, so that water will picks up all these constituents, and it will enjoy the adjoining rivers and streams, thereby increasing its no pesticide pollution. So it depends on the watershed characteristics. And the geology also is an influencing factor, because when the water flows to different rocks and minerals, or maybe below this ground surface, we may be having different ground strata. So depending upon the mineralogical and rocks and minerals composition of a particular area, the water quality changes. Okay, and also with respect to microbial growth, whenever the rainfall occurs, the runoff will carry the dead and decayed matter, then some of the organic pollutants discharge onto the land, or when the water is flowing through the landfills, it picks up all these constituents, and it may add up various microbial population to the water. Similarly, the forest fire may happen in a large catchment area, which will pick up the silt and clay and ashes, the burnt ashes and other organic material, and it may contribute to the source. So likewise, these are some of the natural factors. So other than natural factors, we also have human factors, so which includes the point and non-point source pollution. So point source include the water pollutants from a particular industries, from hazardous waste facilities, from mine drainages, accidental spills and releases. Okay, so point sources are the one, so in which we can measure the actual source of pollution with respect to its quality and quantity. That means you imagine a pipe which is discharging an outfall sewer which is discharging the pollutants into a river or a lake with a 0.5 meter of diameter. So if this much quantity of water is flowing in a river, so through this 0.5 meter diameter of sewer, then we can measure the discharge. So those kinds of sources we call it as point sources, and it can be from various industries, okay, which is listed here. So non-point sources are the one, so they are called as the diffused sources of pollution. So we cannot actually measure the source of pollution, because it comes from various diffuse sources. So example is the agriculture runoff. So here what happens, if we are irrigating a particular piece of land, then we may have to use various forms of pesticides, herbicides and all those things. In that case, we will be putting lot of chemicals and other hazardous pesticides to the crops, so that will join the river or a lake to the diffuse sources, from various diffuse sources, that is called as non-point sources. Similarly, the livestock will also contribute to the loss of source. Then the erosion activities, whenever the rainfall occurs on the roads and urban areas, which will pick up the sand and clay and silt material, so which may be also regarded as the non-point source pollution. Okay, the location of the sampling. Okay, so whatever the samples we are taking, it should represent the actual source. Okay, and the sampling points should be uniformly distributed. That means if you are having a river or a lake, okay, of so and so hectares, so that should be divided into equal intervals. That is, we can collect the sample at 250 meter of regular intervals along the periphery, or we have to divide the areas into various number of grids in X and Y pattern, so that the samples can be collected, and it will cover the entire area. Okay, and at least there should be one sampling point directly after the clean water inlet and outlet. Okay, if you are having a river which may be having an inlet and outlet, okay, to get the homogeneity and to get the clear water quality picture of this water body, we should take the sample at inlet as well as at the outlet. Okay, and we should also take the sample from the farthest end of the water body, so that we can know the status of the water body at the inlet and also the outlet. This is the sampling flow chart. So it consists of different steps here. The first step is called as sampling planning. Okay, so the planning is important. That means how to sample, who is going to sample, at what time we are collecting the sample, what is the size of the sample. Okay, so that involves the sampling planning. So what kind of containers we should select, so that involves the planning stage. So then water sampling preparation, which includes the rinsing and refrigerating the water quality samples which are collected. Then the nomenclature of the water samples, how many containers are required, what is the size of the sample. So all those things should be taken into account. That phase is called as water sampling preparation. Then the sampling at the site, so which is the site, at what time we are sampling, how much sample should be collected, so what is the sampling interval, what is the frequency. So all those things should be planned properly, and that is called as sampling at sites. And what are the precautions which should be maintained before collecting the sample, and the transportation of those collected samples, how to transport the samples, at what time we should be taken to the laboratory when we collect the sample, and whether it is required to store the samples in a ice box or a thermostat before we bring in the water samples to the laboratory. So all these things comes under this transportation phase. And storage and analysis, sometimes we can directly analyze the sample after transportation if the water samples are few, and if the water quality parameter is to be analyzed are very less parameters, then we can directly analyze. Sometimes we may have to store it and analyze if the number of samples are more. In that case, what is the storage methodology, how it is to be stored, whether it should be stored in a refrigerator at constant pressure or temperature, and that should also be taken into account. And this is the entire sampling flow chart, which represents the collection of the sample until the analysis. And these are the various phases in sampling procedure and analysis of water quality. What are the different sampling methods? So we have the static methods and dynamic methods. So in water quality, most of the phenomena are dynamic in nature, because the water quality changes with respect to time. That is it also varies season wise, and it depends on the discharge of pollutants which it receives, it depends on the pesticides and all those things. So most of the water quality things are very dynamic in nature. So what are different types of sampling? So there are basically three types of sampling techniques. One is called as grab or catch samples, then composite samples, then integrated samples. So generally for most of the drinking water quality monitoring systems, the grab samples are taken. Let us see in detail what are these techniques. So a grab sample is a discrete sample which is collected at a specific location at a certain point of time. If the environmental medium varies spatially or temporally, then a grab sample is not representative and more samples need to be collected. Okay, so it is a sample which is collected at a specific location at a certain point of time. So let us assume a river water body here, okay, and you are collected the sample at location X, okay, at 10 a.m. in the morning. So next, after 15 days or after 1 month, we again go to same place and we collect the sample at location X at 10 a.m. or maybe the next day or the previous day or after 15 days or after 1 month. So if we collect the sample at a particular location at a specific time, then we call it as grab sampling. Okay, so similarly, if you collect the samples at location X, location Y and location Z at specific interval of time, and if you mix the sample of X, Y and Z, then that is called as composite sampling. Okay, that is called as the different types of sampling. So how to use the how to collect the sample? So we have to rinse the sample from the source using the same water up to 3 to 4 times, and we should hold the bottle at the bottom, and we should gently collect the sample by immersing the hand at around 10 centimeter from the surface of the water, and we should not collect the water to the full level. We should leave around 10% of the space for proper air circulation, and this is how we should collect the sample at the source. And we have various water samplers. Okay, so most of the water sampling techniques involve the weights under suspension, which will be dipped with respect to its self weight, and the samples are collected. Okay, so this is one such simple water sampler which consists of the weight and the ropes, and a collection container, and it will be lowered in the water body, and the water is collected. Similarly, we have bucket or sampler with tabs. So this consists of a wooden shaft or a steel shaft, and it consists of a container or a bucket, and a rope can be attached to this, and so this can be used to collect the samples from the sources. Okay, so we also have the Hayrite water sampler. So this consists of, it is similar to the sampler which we have discussed in the previous slide. So here it also consists of a frame with a container and a weight at the bottom. Okay, because of that, the water it will enter into the water body, and sometimes we may have to collect the water at various depths, and let us say from the surface level up to the 50-meter level or 100-meter level or 150-meter level. So we have the measuring scale, we can use this, and we can dip the container at a desired depth level, and we can open this using a rope, the lid, and we can collect the samples, and this is called as Hayrite water sampler. Okay, so we also have this Van Dorn water sampler. So this can, here the water sampling can be done at various depths. Okay, similar to the Hayrite water sampler, so it consists of various levels, and the openings are different levels with rubber lids and these things, and it is it can be lowered, and at a stretch this sampler can collect the water up to 20 liters. Okay, so this is made up of acrylic resin or polycarbonate sheets, and the weight is attached at the end of rope, and it will be slowly lowered from the surface to the various depths in a water body, and the sampling can be done at different levels. Okay, so this is called as Van Dorn water sampler. So similarly, we have insulated water sampler. Okay, here this sampler is used to maintain the temperature, and it is having an insulation at an outer cover. So it also works on the same principle of weight. So we can lower this sampler into the water level, and by dropping the messenger, the lower lids can be opened, and the water will be sunk into this, and it can be collected from this kind of sampler. You can see the various parts here. In all of these water samplers, the weight is very common and ropes are common. So depending upon the purpose of sampling and size of the sample and our requirements, we can use any one of the sampler to collect the water sample, okay, from the source. So we also have something called as groundwater bailer. Okay, so here this is particularly used for collecting the groundwater samplers. So bailers can be made up by PVC or FEP or stainless steel. So it can be lowered from the aquifer or borewell pit, and it can be dipped into the lower level, and at a different depth, and the water can be collected, okay, using this groundwater bailer. And we can also use suction lift pumps. Okay, so you might have seen the pumps which we use for our household activities to pump the water from the underground sump to the top level overhead tanks. So we can similarly we can use these pumps, and we can extract the water, and we can do the analysis. Okay, we also have these airlift samplers, but if you want to do the analysis of chemical analysis and for pH analysis, their airlift samplers are not usually advisable. It is similar to the suction pump, which injects the compressed air at the bottom of discharge pipe, which is immersed in the liquid, and it can collect the sample. Okay, so these are various instruments used for the sampling of the water. Okay, so similar to that, the pump, we also have submersible pump nowadays, which will be completely submerged in the water, and we can collect the water by pumping the water using the submersible pumps. And whatever the samples which we are collecting, it should give the meaningful and reliable results, and there should be minimum time between the time of collection and water quality analysis. That means we should see that as soon as possible we should do the analysis once we collect the samples. And for chemical examination of water, the proper care must be taken. Proper preservation should be done before doing analysis. For biological examination, extreme care can be taken during sample collection and its preservation. So we shall see in coming slides that what containers are used, what is the temperature which is maintained, and all those things. And for biological analysis, the frequency is also important. So how the sample is collected, how it is stored, how it is dispatched, and we should use the sterilized bottles to collect the sample to avoid the contamination. Sometimes the sample and the collector, the collection bottles itself might be contaminated with some microbial contamination. So if you collect the sample using those bottles, we maybe end up by reporting wrong results. So for that reason, the bottles should be sterilized before using it for the analysis. And whatever the samples we are collecting, it should be of adequate size. That means we may have to go and travel very long distances as per our sampling plan. So if you collect very less water, then if you bring it to the laboratory, if there is no enough water, then it is of no use of collecting the sample from such a long distance. So the sampling, the size of the sample should be decided. That is, if you need 1 liter or 2 liter or 3 liter for the entire analysis, so we should see that the adequate quantity should be collected for analysis. Okay, and the care should be taken that there should not be any contamination, and as soon as possible we should analyze the water quality, then unless the preservation is required. And the sample should be clearly described, and there should be proper labeling on the sample bottles, like who has done sampling, what is the location of the sampling, what is the time, and whether some in situ parameters can be recorded, like temperature or DO6 fixation can be done at the site itself, and some of the other parameters like titrimetric analysis and chemical analysis can be done in the laboratories. Then what are the sampling containers? It should be free from all form of contamination, and it should not change the water characteristics, and it should not actually react with the water. That means the sample containers, whatever we are containing, should not have any colors and other impurities which should not react with the water which is collected, and it should contain adequate quantity for analysis. That is the like I told you, it should be 1 liter or 500 milliliter or 10 ml. So depending upon the analysis, we should know how much sample is required. See, for example, for chemical analysis of water, the container should be colorless or white plastic jerry cans should be used. For bacteriological analysis, the sterilized bottles with glass topper should be used, and it should be pre-sterilized in autoclave at a pressure of 1 kg per centimeter square for 15 minutes duration before collecting the samples. Okay, and samples with residual chlorine should be dechlorinated for bacteriological analysis. Okay. So then sampling procedure also involves the sampling bottle or container should be open only when it is required for filling. That means during travel the bottle should not be opened, because the contaminants in air may enter or it may cause some interference in between. So it should be opened and only when the sample is to be collected. Okay, and bottle should be held from the base while filling, and bottle should not be completely filled, and some space should be left for air to facilitate shaking before analysis. And sampling of hand pump. Okay, so while collecting the sample from hand pump from the groundwater, the water should be pumped for about 5 minutes, and the water should be allowed to run. Then we have to collect the samples, because sometimes some impurities might come and it may give the interference for the analysis. So if we are collecting the water sample from a tap, the water should be allowed to run for 3 to 4 minutes. Then we have to collect the sample. Okay, so for estimation of total residual chlorine, the farthest stand post should be considered for the sampling, because the contact time may not be sufficient sometimes, so it may give you the residual chlorine. And the data sheet should be filled and accompanied with the sample for analysis. The data sheet involves all forms of information, like what is the sample location, who has collected the sample, name of the sampler, date of the sample, time of the sampling, whether daytime or whether it is night time. So because this will also have the impact on certain environmental parameters, like there will be changes in the pH if you collect the sample at daytime or night time or vice versa. So the data sheet is very important because unless the proper data sheet is maintained, then it is difficult to know the parameters, and it is difficult to have an environmental management plan without proper data sheet. Okay. And as far as possible, the sample should be examined preferably within 1 hour after collection. Okay. And sometimes it should not case more than 24 hours, and we should maintain the proper temperature. So to avoid all these things, the best thing is to analyze the sample as soon as you bring it to the laboratory. So otherwise the sample should be preserved and under 4 degrees centigrade for the analysis. So for bacteriological analysis, the sample should be analyzed within 72 hours, and it should not cross more than 72 hours. And these are some of the preservation techniques for various water quality parameters. So as far as possible, the temperature should be measured at the site itself, and the turbidity should also nowadays we have a pocket kind of pH meters and temperature sensors and turbidity meters. So directly we can take it to the laboratory and we can measure the sample. So it is best to measure in the field the turbidity, and if it can be stored, then it should be stored for in the dark for 24 hours. And for pH, as far as possible, it should be at the site itself. Okay. And pH is a temperature dependent parameter. And hardness, the sample should be filtered, and if you want to store the sample, the CO, the calcium carbonate sediment may appear. So in order to dissolve that, we may have to add small quantity of HCl after decanting the clear liquid above the sediment. And for nitrate and nitrite analysis and nitrogenous compounds, 2 to 4 ml of chloroform has to be added to retard the bacterial decomposition, and the sample should be cooled and then stored at 3 to 4 degree centigrade if you are preserving the sample for analysis. Then for ammonia, it should be deep frozen with 0.8 ml of H2SO per liter and then stored at 4 degrees centigrade. So before analysis, the acid should be neutralized. So these are some of the preservation techniques for various types of chemical analysis. For sodium and potassium, it can be stored in plastic bottles, okay, without any preservation. For calcium analysis, similar to the hardness, if the calcium carbonate is precipitated, then it should be redissolved with HCl and nitric acid, and it can be neutralized before analysis. Okay, if you want to preserve the sample for calcium analysis. Similarly, for sulfate, it can be stored in the refrigeration for maximum up to 7 days, and we should avoid the prolonged storage to get the accurate results. So magnesium chloride and fluoride analysis, there cannot be no preservation is not required, and it can be analyzed within 24 hours or maximum up to 3 to 4 days. So sulfide, it can be mixed with cadmium acetate or zinc acetate, and after which can be stored up to 3 days in the dark. So cyanide is highly reactive and active, and it is unstable compound, and it should be preserved with sufficient NaOH to raise the pH to 11 or more, and then it should be stored at 4 degree centigrade. And while analysis, it should be neutralized and we can analyze the sample. And for arsenic, it should be preserved by adding concentrated HCl of 12 normal at 1 ml per liter of the sample. For metal analysis, it should be pre-treated by acidification before transportation to the lab to suppress hydrolysis or sorption. And very high degree of cleanliness in sampling handling at all the stages of collection analysis is necessary to avoid contamination and the incorrect results. Okay. So these are some of the preservation techniques for various these things, and these are some of the containers which should be used for the analysis of various chemicals. So in general, we use the glass container. So in the absence of that, for especially for bacteriological analysis, we use glass containers. That is, for example, for BOD, we use glass container, and it can be preserved in 4 degrees centigrade in dark. And for COD, nitrate, ammonia, and nitrogenous compounds, so it should be preserved by adding the H2SO4 and by maintaining the pH less than 2, and the container can be glass. And for coliform, glass bottle. For dissolved oxygen, BOD bottle, and DO fixation can be done at the site itself. And for bacteriological analysis, as you can see here, so we are using most of the glass containers. So these are chemical compounds. For chemical analysis, it can be glass or even the Teflon coated bottle or polychloride bottle. So there is not any preservation for fluoride. For phosphate, the glass container can be used and without any preservation. For pesticides, we have to use the glass container or Teflon coating, and it should be stored under 4 degrees centigrade. For toxic metals, we can use glass container by adding nitric acid and maintaining the pH of less than 2. Similarly, for other chemicals, so we have to use the uh, bottles of the glass or polycarbonate material. So the frequency of the sample is generally determined by population served, size and the type. So that means how many samples are collected and what is the interval. So it depends on the type of analysis. The frequency can be 1 day, 15 days or 10 days or bi-monthly or monthly or quarterly or season wise. Okay, so that is dependent on our the purpose, and it should be properly decided, and we should develop this source. And also in summer there is a greater risk of contamination due to the less flow in water bodies, and as soon as the monsoon arrives, there is greater risk of pollution because the rainwater along with the runoff, it brings in lot of pollutants, the ability, silt, clay, organic matter, etc. into the sources of water. So the care should be taken that while sampling we should properly mention the time of analysis, that is whether it is pre-monsoon or whether it is summer or winter or rainy season. Okay, so these are some of the suggested frequency of sample for different types of sources. For example, for open wells and groundwaters, for bacteriological analysis we have to collect the sample every 7 days. For physical or chemical analysis, because it will not vary much, so we can collect it quarterly, that is 4 times yearly. So in covered vessels, so in covered wells and shallow tube wells with hand pumps, for bacterial analysis we can collect bi-monthly or for every 15 days, and similarly for physical chemical parameters we can collect the sample 4 times in a year. For deep tube wells with hand pumps, and so as per requirement we can collect for physical and chemical analysis, it can be 4 times in a year. And for well and pipe supplies, it is as per requirement. For spring and pipe supplies, it is as per requirement. So usually for most of the parameters, for physical chemical parameters, it will be usually 4 times a year or quarterly. And for especially biological parameters, because it will have the huge impacts sometimes if there is an epidemic or this risk of spread of diseases, so that is done based on the requirement. So as and when it is required for a day, or sometimes maybe 2 times in a day, or 3 days, once a week, it depends on the requirement. So there is a uniform protocol on water quality monitoring as per WHO. So it is applicable to all the organizations, agencies and any other body monitoring surface and groundwater quality for observance on uniform protocol on water quality monitoring. So the frequency of sampling with respect to groundwater shall be as follows as per the protocol. All stations should be classified as baseline stations, and 20 to 25% of baseline stations shall be classified as trend stations where there is some problem, and all agencies should follow the sampling frequency and parameter for analysis of groundwater as mentioned in the table. So it is for groundwater samples, the frequency is twice per year, pre and post monsoon season, and the parameters can be color, odor, temperature, pH, electrical conductivity and TDS, and nutrients like nitrate, phosphates, nitrate, etc., and the demand parameter like COD, and some of the major chemical ions like sodium, potassium, and the organics like fluoride, boron, and some other specific parameters like arsenic, cadmium, nickel, chromium, etc. Okay, so similarly for these are the parameters for groundwater analysis, that is season wise. So same parameters, that is pre-monsoon and during post-monsoon season. Then analysis of groundwater for like micropollutants and all. So the pesticides, the organic pesticides, the COD values, if it is exceeding beyond 20 mg per liter, the sample shall be analyzed for BOD also. So likewise the proper sampling plan can be adopted. So for analysis of various forms of chemicals, So sampling is, as we have seen, the various necessity of sampling, various types of sampler, the frequency of sampler, how to sampler, what should be the size of the containers, and what is the preservation techniques, and the different types of parameters. So let us stop at this stage. And the sampling appropriate, we should sample appropriately and accurately to get the exact results, because the based on the water quality parameters are the results what we obtain. So most of the things will be decided, like the treatment methodology, the treatment methods, and the how to prevent the pollution, and supplying the potable water to the communities. Everything depends on the sampling analysis and the water quality results. So the sampling should be done appropriately, and also the analysis should be done appropriately by minimizing various forms of errors, so to get the exact results. Okay, so we'll start up this test. Maybe in the next class I will suggest you and share you some of the sampling techniques and the sampling procedures, wherein people have done by various techniques, so that you can understand how the sampling is done, how the analysis is done in the laboratory and all. Okay, so till then, take care. So we shall meet in the next session.